The following is a presentation on the journey of self-discovery through the universal wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. Peace, happiness, and a re-energized purpose await those embarking on this journey. Explore perfect answers to timeless questions. The journey of self-discovery.
Welcome, everyone, to this journey of self-discovery. And we have been making, hopefully, some formations of our plans on this journey. As we talked about, all journeys entail some planning, some assessment of where it is that I'm going, why am I going there, when am I going to go. And as we are on this journey of life, certainly moving very, very fast, we've been taking the last few weeks to begin to think about this journey. And so today we're going to cross through the midpoint of this seminar. This is our fourth week, and we are discussing the third module. And it's actually a turning point in our seminar, as we're going to go fairly deep into the philosophy and pull from scriptures to try to understand some topics that are a little subtle and maybe not so easy to grasp at first. So we'll repeat some topics a few times for emphasis and try to explain in some different ways to begin to understand this topic, which today the module is entitled, Who Am I? So we started this discussion several weeks ago with that search for happiness. Anybody woke up today thinking I want to be unhappy? All right. I think I'll keep trying just in case. But we all wake up with that same goal. And we talked about how the key to finding this real happiness is understanding this relationship with God. And so for the last 2 weeks we've been discussing, does God even exist? How do we know that God exists? And we talked about some basic understandings, how creation implies a creator, laws imply a lawmaker, and so on. So that brings us then to today's topic, which is then, who am I? If there is a God, then who am I? And we're going to analyze this in great detail and discuss herein the science of the soul. And then next week, we're going to begin discussing the topic of why do bad things happen to good people? And why do good things happen to bad people? Both of these questions cause great confusion. So it'll take us 2 weeks to cover next week's module. So we're going to begin next week's module with an understanding of the different species, why we came to this material creation, what this is all about, and some other topics to then bring us to understand and discuss these laws of karma. And then in the fifth module, we'll discuss what does it all mean for me today, tomorrow, and the day after. What is the practical application of all of this knowledge that we've acquired? How can I bring it into my life in a practical means so that I can begin to take steps towards this ultimate goal of finding this perfection of life, this life full of peace and happiness? And so we're going to discuss a lot about that today and where it comes. So this is the question for today I pose to all of us. Who am I? Who are you? Who are we? This is the second of our key inquiries. The first was, does God exist? And we used some intelligence to confirm that. And now we're going to discuss this topic of the science of self-realization. Realizing the self. Understanding who it is that I am. And it is actually the basis for all of our spiritual consciousness. It is the beginning of everything that we need to know. It forms this great foundation. So arguably this can be said is the most important of our modules. And I'll prove it with how the Bhagavad Gita is even structured in a little bit. So if we're going to solve these challenges, these real problems, to find this real happiness, we need to have a good understanding of who it is that I am. Who am I? And I challenged last time that it's not simply a process of pulling out our driver's license and saying, this is who I am. Because what we couldn't answer from that is, who were we 100 years ago? And who will we be 100 years from now? That driver's license is a temporary designation of who we are. But who is the eternal self? That is what we're going to discuss. And with that, we'll begin to then understand, what is my relationship then with this God, this cause of all causes? What is my role in this creation? Why was I created? I'm not the source. There is a supreme source. Why did he create me and all of us around us? What is our purpose? And how do we unlock the potential of why we were created? You know, if, for example, you're pushed into an office building and you're told, go to work. Well, what do we need to know? What's my role in this office? What do I do? Am I the CEO or am I the janitor? Am I in engineering or sales? Marketing or operations? I need to know what is my function. Knowing my function, knowing my role, then I can begin to act in that. And I'll find understanding, clarity of purpose in this building. So similarly, we're within this world, this creation. Who am I and what is my purpose here? That is what we'll discuss in the coming section. So the answer, and then we'll build up, we see in the Bhagavad Gita, we're very clearly told in the very beginning that we are not this body. We are eternal spirit soul. Our identity is the spirit soul that resides within this body. And eternal means that it's always existed. And it will always exist in the future. That is the meaning of eternal. And one of the features of the soul we'll discuss is its sat potency. And so now I'm going to make a statement that at first is going to feel far-fetched, maybe an exaggeration, maybe a little whimsical. But just file away this statement and let the rest of this module unfold, and then we'll revisit it. But this process, when we perfect the understanding of who we are as the self, when we have full and absolute conviction and understanding that I am spirit soul residing within this body, and I begin to shape my activities accordingly, our entire life transforms. The things that give us difficulty, that give us confusion, stress, fear, and anxiety will very quickly dissipate with a simple but very profound change of our consciousness when we begin to see that I am spirit soul. When we have this full realization, all these difficulties of stress and fear and anxiety, old age, difficulties of body and mind, they no longer continue, to shape our consciousness, to affect our feeling of peace and happiness. As I said, a lot to digest, but just file that away. When we perfect this understanding of the self, and we'll see in small steps, actually experience it today, that it in fact is the case. That these troubles no longer affect me because they're not affecting who I really am. They're simply affecting my body. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashotati Nakankshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. He says, Brahma Bhuta, when one realizes that I am this eternal spirit soul, one becomes prasanatma, fully joyful. What is it that we're all looking for? This happiness. When does it happen? When we realize the self. It is there and will come to experience it. This realization, it's like a giant umbrella. What the heck does that mean? Sometimes people ask, the devotees, those are practicing this philosophy, they seem happy. They seem at ease, at peace. Are they not troubled by, the weather and difficulties in the body? Do they not get headaches and fever and the flu? Why is it there? Well, what we'll see is that this realization of the self is like this giant umbrella. If it is raining outside, there's not much we can do to stop the rain. But if I walk outside with an umbrella, I can prevent the effect of rain from hitting me. The rain will no longer be able to affect me as my person because I am protected by this umbrella. This realization of the self is like that. Yes, difficulties in life are going to come. But when we begin to remember and take shelter of this understanding that I am eternal spirit soul, it forms this umbrella to shield us from the effect of all those things around us. It's not going to stop them. Trust me, just because we realize a self doesn't mean all of a sudden I'm immune to disease. That's not going to happen. But we can become immune to the effect on our consciousness, on the effect in the peace of mind and happiness we experience. And it starts with that self-realization. So let us begin to explore. As I promised you, I know that was a lot, but bear with me. So we're going to discuss today, who am I? What is the proof of the existence of the soul? What are the different types of bodies we have? And then we're going to answer some frequently answered questions about the soul. And as I mentioned, the soul is a very subtle topic. So it's sometimes a little bit difficult to grasp at first. If some of it is a little confusing, bear with us. We'll repeat it a few times. We'll go through different examples. And hopefully in time it will become clear. So, in the Mahabharata is a great epic. There's a great pastime. When there were 5 brothers, the Pandavas, and the eldest of brothers, Yudhishthira Maharaj, was feeling thirsty. And so he asked his younger brother to fetch some water. And there was a nearby lake. And so Sahadev went to fetch some water. And he took his drinking pot and was just about to submerge it in the pond. And a voice came. Someone who was occupying his leg said, you cannot take water until you answer my question. And Sahadev said, my brother is thirsty. I'll take water and answer later. And he went to take the water. He fell over unconscious. Some time passed. Then the second brother, Nakul, came. Same thing, went to dip the water. You must answer my question. Question second, water first. Dip the pot. Fell, passed. Third brother, fourth, Bhim, Arjuna came. Finally, Yudhishthira Maharaj is wondering, what's going on? They just went to fetch some water. Nobody's coming back. Maybe everybody's swimming and enjoying. Let me go see. So he went. And that same voice came and said, please, your brothers have fell to the same fate. Just answer my question, and then all of you can enjoy as much water as you want. Yudhishthira Maharaj said, fine, come with your question. Bring it. And this Yakshasa said, what is the most amazing thing in the world? And what did Yudhishthira Maharaj answer? The Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal, the iPhone. He said, the most amazing thing in this world is that every day people are seeing others around us perish in this world, dying. Yet no one thinks it's going to happen to me. Every day we are moving about, day after day, acquiring all these things, wealth and fame and strength and intelligence and beauty and all these things, working so hard. We all know it's happening to everyone around us, but to us we think we're invincible. And thus we make no preparation for that event. Just like that fool we talked about way back in the first lesson. Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying, it is amazing that And everyone knows this is coming. If I said at the end of this session there's going to be an exam, everyone would start to take voracious notes. Or if I said in 2 weeks we're going to go to Hawaii, how much preparation we would start doing? We would start finding a nice pair of sunglasses, our favorite swimming trunks, buying sunscreen, researching what we're going to... So much preparation because we know that journey's coming. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying everyone knows it's coming. And everyone is working so hard to accumulate these things, none of which they can take with them. Yet nothing is being done for this inevitable fact. To me, nothing is more amazing than that. And the Yakshasha was pleased by the answer and allowed them to take water. And what Yudhishthira Maharaj is speaking about here is that everyone is going through life without consciousness of thinking, what is good for my soul? Everyone is fully busy understanding what is good for my body. Eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, defend nicely. But what is it that I'm giving to my soul that can give me eternal benefit? So that is what we'll discuss today. So, this question, who are you? Seems like, again, a simple answer. I am Sam, Julie, Mike, whatever. All these designations. I am tall, short, I am light, dark, male, female. But again, these are all temporary designations. What were we 100 years ago? Were we tall or short? Male or female? What were we? We don't know. So, what is the eternal identity? So our doctors, what do they say? This is Dr. Harry Monson, a professor of anatomy at Illinois. And he said, well, we're just a collection of materials. And he analyzed that we're, calcium and phosphate and all these different raw materials, water. Well, based on that assessment, what is the value of the body? If you're going to go to Amazon and buy all those materials, we're worth $2.25. Anybody buy that? No. We say life is precious. Life is priceless. If we're just a combination of a bunch of chemicals and materials that are found in the planet, then what is it that's so invaluable that we can't put a price on? That thing that is priceless, that you can't buy anywhere, is the soul. That is the value that we see in this body. So how to understand the soul that resides within this body? We're going to come back to this analogy over and over and over and over again. And those of you who have attended some of my other sessions hear this all the time. Car and driver. This metaphor of the car and driver is helping us to understand the soul that is sitting within this body. So we see that the car and the body have very similar features. I have a mouth, a car has a horn. I have eyes, a car has headlights. But beyond that, a car is just matter. It's dead matter. And what does it need to move? A driver. It needs someone to operate it. This body, Harry Monson just said, it's a bunch of raw materials. Matter doesn't move. What is the driver within this body? That is the soul. Just as a car will not move 1 inch without the presence of the driver, this body does not move without the presence of the soul. And so what is the importance of understanding the body and the soul? Well, just in the car and driver example, when the car gets hungry, we give it fuel. But when the driver gets hungry, we give it food. When the car gets sick, we take it to a mechanic. When the driver gets sick, we take it to a doctor. So the car has needs and the driver has needs. And the solutions to those needs are different. So we're very attuned to the needs of the body. But have we thought, what are the needs of the soul? What is it that feeds and fuels and nourishes the soul? So we have to understand that there is within this body a soul. And that soul is the driving force in this body. Just as a car, our cars are seated in a parking lot. Until we get in there and start driving it, it is just matter. So in this way, we'll use this analogy to try to understand the difference between the body and the soul. I apologize, it's very cold in here today, but it's keeping us up at least, I hope. It's a subtle reminder we're not this body. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about the nature of the soul. Actually, the very first instruction he gives is this: you are not the body. It is the foundation of everything that he said. He actually speaks 20 verses on the nature of the soul. Why so much emphasis? One, because it's so critically important. It is the beginning of our whole journey in this self-discovery process. And two, it's not such an easy topic to understand. It's subtle. It's not something we can touch, feel, and put our hands around. But it is vitally important. And so the Lord speaks. And when Arjuna was speaking to Krishna, asking his questions, he was bewildered, distressed. He was confused about who he was, what his purpose in life was. He was full of fear and anxiety. And Krishna knew the only way to rid ourselves of those feelings is to come to understand I am spirit soul. I can guarantee you 100% of the time that we are feeling in fear, stress, anxiety, uncertainty, clarity, it is because we are looking at that situation from the perspective of I am body, I am the car, forgetting that I am spirit soul. When we begin to see all our activities from that perspective, things will become very, very clear. A simple example, and I'll give another one on the next slide. I'm walking down the street and someone yells to me, "Hey, you're ugly." I feel pain. I'm upset. I begin to wonder, really? I pull out my Facebook. I've got some light. I'm not that. It hurts. But who is that person calling ugly? My body. It's like driving down the street and someone says your car is ugly. Whatever. Move on. They're not speaking about my soul. But as soon as that moment I remember, wait a minute, I am spirit soul, I'm not this body. Those words, which were initially so hurtful, become, whatever. Bear with me. It'll come. So this understanding of who I am, to think we are someone that we are not, that's the definition of crazy. If I walk around and say, I'm Abraham Lincoln, I'm Abraham Lincoln, and I'm fully convinced I'm Abraham Lincoln, what would you all think of me? I've lost my mind. I have a false sense of identity of who I am. While we are walking around thinking, I am this body, I am this body, I am this body. And so my whole life revolves around how to serve this body. If we analyze everything that we do, that's what we've been working on. How to take this body to nice places, to feed it nice things, to have it see nice things, hear nice things. That's what we do. But if I am not this body, why am I doing all of that? Right? So we are serving the car, but forgetting about the needs of that driver. Right? And because I take so much effort to care for this body, I feel everything that comes to it. Let me give another example. Suppose I got a new car, and I'm very attached to this car. I'm dreaming about this car. I get up in the morning, I look out the window to make sure it's okay. I'm attached to this car. And I'm driving down the street in this car, and a rock comes and hits the car. I feel pain. Why do I feel pain? Was I hit by the rock? No, the car was hit. But why do I feel pain? Because I'm attached to that car. I identify my existence with that car. So what happens to that vehicle now affects me as the driver. But if I have a more normal attachment to my car, yes, it's a useful vehicle to get me from point A to point B. But I'm not obsessed about it. And something happens to my car. How much does it affect me as the driver? Not so much. When we become obsessed with this understanding that I am this body, everything that comes to it starts to trouble our consciousness. But as soon as I remind myself, no, I am spirit soul. I'm independent from this body. We begin to find relief from those experiences. So let's table that for a little bit and try to understand the proof of this presence of the soul within us. How do we know that there is actually a soul within all of us? So we're going to look at a couple of things. But we can understand that anything that has consciousness has a soul. This microphone stand does not have a soul because it doesn't have consciousness. Consciousness is awareness. If I stub my toe, I feel it. Ow. Because I'm conscious. But if I knock this, there's no ow. It's unconscious. So all entities that have some consciousness, we can understand that there's a soul present. Otherwise, it is just dead matter. So humans, birds, plants, trees, all living entities, they have a soul. So the proof of the soul, we're going to take a logical perspective and look at it from common sense and introspection. We'll take a scientific approach and understand it from some research that's been done on near-death experiences and reincarnation. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we're going to see what is it that the scriptures say about who we are. So, let us see first. When someone dies, we say, so-and-so has passed away. Who passed away? The body is there. The person is lying there. What passed away? Moments before that person passed away, that body was the source of our comfort and our love. But as soon as that soul passes away, that body becomes fearful to us. What's changed? The presence of the soul. What is that we love between all of us is not between the body, it is between the souls. As soon as that soul leaves the body, that whole relationship changes instantly with that body. There was once a woman who, this elderly couple were living together. 50 years they were married. And husband was a source of love and care and comfort and protection her whole life. And one late evening he was ill, terminally ill, and he passed away. And because it was late in the evening and he passed away at home, the body was going to stay there overnight. And the lady asked her two sons, "Can you please stay with me tonight?" Why? There's a fear of that body. That same body that supposedly was the source of so much care and compassion and love. It wasn't the body that was the source of that care, compassion, and love. It was the soul. So when we say it passes away, it implies there's something that has left the body. Something of great value. Some introspection. How I am not this body. Who is the my when I say my body, my mind, my hands, my legs? Who is the my? That is what we'll answer. So I can say, this is my sweater. But I am not this sweater. This is my sweater. If I put my sweater over here, I don't say, I am over there. I say, my sweater is over there. That is my sweater. I am not this sweater. This is my hand, but I am not this hand. If my hand was over there, I don't say, I am over there. What do I say? My hand is over there, not I hand over there, because this hand is mine, but I am not this hand. This is my shoulders, my legs, my head. I won't carry on with those examples, but you won't get the point. I am not this body, but it is my body. Well, then who is the mind? Sometimes we want to say, well, isn't that the mind and intelligence? Well, we say, my mind and my intelligence. We don't say, I mind, I intelligence. And because we actually hear from both the mind and the intelligence, we have the good parrot and the bad parrot, one saying do it, one saying don't, one saying do it, one saying don't. We all have that dialogue of any activity. Who is the my of that? That my is spirit soul. I am not this body, but it is my body. If I asked all of you to bring your baby pictures today, and I would say, who is that? You would say, that's me. But who is the me? The body is completely changed from boyhood to middle age to old age. Science even says every 7 years, every cell in your body has regenerated. Every single cell in your body. Which means every 7 years we have a completely new body. So if I say this is me, who is the me? Who is that me? That me is the soul. It is not the body. The body is constantly changing. And we're going from one type of body to another. Even within this lifetime. Anybody has the exact same body they had 10 years ago? 20 years ago? No. But we do identify a me in that. That me is the spirit soul. Michael Sabom, he wrote a book called Light and Death. He studied these cases where people were experiencing near-death life-changing events. And after they recovered, they were on the verge of death. And after they recovered, he had interviewed them. And he was stunned that all of them speak about the same effect. Though they're all unrelated, never knew each other, they all speak about levitating above the body. They speak about moving at a very fast pace to something that looks very bright. And they would give details. One lady who was in a car accident and she underwent emergency brain surgery. And she was on this verge of death. She described how she was observing the doctors performing this surgery on her own self. And she was explaining the type of drill they had. It looked like one of those electric toothbrushes, and how the two doctors were talking about the blade that, and the doctors were amazed how she knew all this. And Sabom, after analyzing all of these different cases, he concludes this book with asking this question. At death, there is certainly some separation of something from the body. And he questions, is this what the spiritualists call the soul? He wouldn't quite go as far to call it the soul, but he asked a question. That there is something that distinct from the body that seems to exist. Dr. Ian Stevenson wrote another very famous book, The 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. The book was written in mid-70s, I think 1974. And he had studied reincarnation. What does reincarnation demonstrate? That there is a living force, something within us that is present in even prior bodies. There's something that carries from life to life. The I, the me, the mine. And he would study kids who were 4 or 5 years old who were exhibiting strange behaviors. They would speak a language completely foreign to the home or lands in which they grew up. They would speak about things that made no sense, like their careers and their family and their spouses, because they were remembering their prior lives. They studied different people, and incredible number of cases. He documented 20 of these in this book. And this psychiatrist, she called Dr. Stevenson once. There was a boy in Mumbai who was 4 years old. He came from a Marathi family. And at a very young age, he was speaking fluent Hindi. And he kept telling his parents to take me to Udaipur. I have to go to work. My family is there. And his parents were bewildered. They thought there was some, issue. So they took him to see this psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist began to understand that this seems to be another case. They called Dr. Stevenson and they began to study. And they set up a test. And they boarded him on a train. And they told him they were taking him to Delhi for further evaluation. But they actually got off in Udaipur. And he began to walk. And immediately he was walking through this town, through these very narrow streets to a village. And he came to one house. And he says, "This is my house." And Stevenson went in and he interviewed a lady staying there. And she spoke about how her husband had passed 5 years ago, how they had children, everything that this young boy was saying. And he looked him further to this museum that was just recently converted from an office into a museum. And he was taking them through all these different places and secret passages. And they're wondering how they knew. And he explained, "This is where I used to work." Like this, there were many cases Stevenson documented. And it showed that there was something that carried from one life to the next. Again, providing some evidence of this understanding of the soul. So from a logical perspective, something is passing away. I am not this body. There's something within me that is the constant, the mind. To the scientific understandings of this difference between the body and the soul. To now, what does Scripture say? This verse, this 13th verse, Dehino spinitadehe kamoram yavanam jana tatadehan darapraptir dirastatra namuyati. This is the foundational verse of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Just like if you're going to build a wonderful home, you first have to have a very solid foundation from which to build upon. Before Krishna is going to speak about the different yoga processes, about the modes of nature, the laws of karma, time, and attaining the supreme and the spiritual worlds, and all the different topics he's going to speak, he speaks about this foundational understanding. And he tells Arjuna, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another at death. He is saying that the soul is passing, like those 3 pictures I showed, from young to middle age to old. And ultimately, as this picture shows, the soul is moving, cycling back and forth. We are now maybe having a youthful body, and we'll exchange it for an older body, and an older body. And then ultimately, we'll exchange it again for a new body. This is what the Scriptures are telling us. It is the soul that is moving from body to body. This is the theory of evolution. Darwin was close, but not quite. It is the soul that moves through different species of life. The species are fixed, but the spirit soul is what transmigrates based on our different activities and desires. And so, the Scriptures are guiding us that Dhiras, a sober person, is not bewildered by such a change. We should not become fearful, worried, or in stress or anxiety about the occurrences of the body. When we understand, I am spirit soul that is eternal, it is simply a changing of the bodies. So, how many bodies do we have? That's an interesting question. Anybody want to guess? 1, 2, 10?
84 million?
84 million?
228.
228. 84 million. Wide range. There are 8.4 million species of life. And there are actually 3 bodies we have. So we have a material body, which is made up of 2 parts, a gross body and our subtle body. The gross body is what we can feel, touch. It is made out of earth, air, fire, water, ether. Our subtle body is our mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then we have our spiritual body, which is the spirit soul. So we'll talk about both. This first body, the gross body, that is what we can see and touch. It's like our outer clothing, our jackets and things like that. And we see our body is made up of so many minerals. If we take our vitamins in the morning, we read all those minerals, right? Where do they come from? Earth. 60-70% of the body is made up of water. We know there's some fire in the body. How else it keeps 98.6 degrees? And we know if that fire goes too much, trouble, too low, trouble. That's the fire. There's air and ether. That is like the intracellular space. So these are the 5 parts of the body. And when the soul leaves the body, this gross body is left behind. When we say so-and-so is passed, this is what we see. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, the ether. But just like our vehicles, that alone has no motion. It needs something to drive it. So what is the subtle body? The subtle body is our mind, intelligence, and false ego. Man, buddhi, and ahankara. Those are the Sanskrit terms. And from the mind, we get more subtle to the intelligence. And from the intelligence, even more subtle is the false ego. So at the time of death, what happens? It is actually this subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, that carries the soul to its next destination, its next birth. This is how some are actually able to remember their past existences. Because the intelligence in the mind we have is not just from this lifetime, but it is from many, many lifetimes together. Right? And so, how or what determines where the soul goes? To which body it enters next? There are 8.4 million species of options. And within each species, why this body, why not another one? Why this house, why not that house? What determines that? Well, 2 things. Krishna says, Yam yam vipismaram bhavam ityajantante kalevaram. Whatever it is that we desire at the time of death, that is where the soul goes. What we desire, also based on what our qualifications are. An example. I may desire to live in a mansion. That may be my desire. But based on my qualification, based on the laws of karma, which we'll talk in the coming weeks, if I'm qualified to live in a mansion, I will. But how, either as a cockroach or the owner, is dependent on what I've done previously. But if I want to live in a mansion, I'll live in a mansion. So this desire drives where we go. And the Lord says, Anta kale chamameva smaram muktva kalevaram ya prati samadbhavam. That if at the time of death we think of the Lord, of God, then we live in His kingdom. Where there is no more difficulties. All the doctors are retired. Psychiatrists are unemployed. Everyone is living a life of peace and happiness. So what determines where we go? What it is that we desire. The mind is a storehouse of desires. Everything that we see, that we hear, that we smell, taste, touch, our 5 senses, it creates impressions in the mind. What is the goal of marketing? To create an impression in the mind that stimulates desire to buy that product or service. Why there are so many billboards along the highway? Why does Coca-Cola have to advertise Coca-Cola? Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is. They don't need to inform anyone about what it is. But what are they trying to do? Create more desires in the mind by the sight. So all those desires are stored in the mind. And they pop up. Different desires. And the intelligence decides what to do. So if we have spent our whole life not thinking about our relationship with God, then how those desires will come into the mind. So we know at the end of the day how to get to this real happiness. We said reawakening a relationship with God, going back home to where we came from. Great. All I have to do is think of the Lord at the time of death. I'm all set. But there's a catch. What's the catch? We don't know when. No one knows when. We know the question, we just don't know when. It's like you're going to go into a classroom and the teacher says there's going to be a pop quiz. And here's the question. But we don't know when. So what does a good student do? They prepare every day for that question. So whenever it comes, they're ready. So similarly, when we begin to practice spirituality, we know our desires at the time of leaving this body is going to dictate where we go. If we start to understand what is good for my soul, what is good for my eternal happiness, those desires will manifest today, and whenever that moment comes, no worries, I'm prepared. So this is the subtle body. And now, the spiritual body. This is the spirit soul. And it has 3 ingredients. Sat, Chit, Ananda. I apologize. I know this is dense and there's a lot of detail. I promised this was going to be. But bear with me. It'll come all together. So the soul is made up of Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat means it's eternal. It means it is unborn. It doesn't die. It is always there. It is Chit. Chit means full of knowledge. Actually, all of this knowledge we are acquiring now is lying within our soul. If you go to the word education, it comes from the Latin root educare. And educare means to bring knowledge from out from within. It implies also that this knowledge is residing within us. And we are simply in the process of bringing out this knowledge. And finally, Ananda. The soul is full of bliss. Why is it that every single living entity has a desire to be happy? Why is it the common thread amongst all of us? It is because we all possess this spirit soul, which is full of bliss. That desire to be happy is actually our natural state. It is one of the ingredients of this body. And so our understanding is to figure out, where is the source of our happiness? The happiness we look for, it comes from the spirit soul. It is Ananda. But if we keep trying to find happiness from this body by eating nicely, sleeping nicely, mating nicely, defending nicely, we're constantly going to be frustrated because that happiness won't last and it doesn't have that unlimited feature. But when we begin to realize that the happiness I'm searching for is coming from my soul and its connection with the Supreme Spirit, then I find this unlimited happiness I'm searching for. This is the key. We're looking for the right thing. But now we have to look at it from understanding it comes from the nature of the soul, not the gross and subtle body. So if I'm Sat, Chit, and Ananda, how come I don't feel it? Why am I not happy? Why am I not eternal and full of knowledge? Well, it is like sticking a diamond in the mud. If you stick a diamond into the mud and you pull it out, does it sparkle? Does it shine? Do you see the luster? No. But has the shining, lustrous capability of that diamond been lost? No, it's simply covered. What do I need to do? I just need to clean it. Cleaning it is not bringing about the shine of that diamond. It's simply bringing out its natural potency. Another example is like the mirror. If there's a mirror and there's 2 inches of dust on it, I cannot see myself in that mirror. Is the mirror broken? No. I just have to cleanse the mirror. And by cleansing the mirror, I will again be able to see myself. The soul is Sat Chit and Ananda. But why don't we perceive it? Because it's covered. And this process of spiritual consciousness is the cleansing process of the covering of the soul. The soul is not impure. It is always pure. Just like that diamond always had the ability to luster. We just had to bring it out. Similarly, this bliss, this Ananda, it is right here within all of us. That is the power of what we can unlock through this self-realization. And what is the best soap? The best cleansing agent? Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nashteva, 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 Gatirnyatra. The best cleansing agent in this age is the chanting of the holy names, the chanting of the holy names, the chanting of the holy names. It is the soap to cleanse the covering of our soul, to bring out this most wonderful qualities of this body. So this is how the senses, the mind, the intelligence, and the soul all fit together in this little metaphor example. So the horses are like the senses. The minds are like the ropes that tie the horses together. The intelligence is the driver. And the passenger, that is the soul. So we are on this chariot, this journey through life. But we know, if the intelligence, if the driver lets go of the ropes, what is the destination of that passenger? Into the ditch. If we let our senses and mind dictate where we go, trouble. But with strong intelligence, if we're able to hold on to the mind who wants to take us into all kinds of different directions, and control the senses, not stop the senses. The horses are useful in getting us from here to where we want to go. But we need them to go in this direction, not that direction. So with a good intelligence, a good driver, the passenger finds its way very nicely. The spirit soul can make its way back on its journey of life with good intelligence, fueled by understanding what is best for me, this knowledge we are acquiring. And then the occurrences of the mind and the senses will become under control. But left to their own volition, there is danger at every step. Okay, we'll wrap up with some questions about the soul. The Lord says in the 22nd verse, describing the changing of the bodies, as a person puts on new dresses, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up old ones. This is what the Lord is saying. The soul is constantly giving up old bodies and giving up and getting new ones. Just as when this sweater is worn out, we'll get a new one. We say spirit soul. Why spirit soul? Because the soul is made up of spirit, which means no matter can touch it. A soul cannot be burned by fire, cannot be cut by a weapon, cannot be wet by water, withered by wind. Nothing material can touch the soul. It is a superior product. It cannot become. It is untouchable. So when Arjuna was confused about the prospects of fighting this battle, the Lord is reminding him, the soul cannot be pierced by any weapon. So is the soul and all these bodies the same? No. The Lord says in the 12th verse, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor in the future shall either of us cease to be. What does that mean? We are always individual, independent souls. We never lose our individuality, whether we're here in the material world or back in the spiritual world. We are independent, individual spirit souls. Does the soul have shape? It does. Actually, the soul is what gives shape to the body. Just like a latex glove, you pull it out, it has no shape, but the hand gives shape to that glove. Similarly, the soul is what gives shape to the body. As soon as the soul leaves, what happens to the shape of the body? It begins to decompose. It is the soul that is actually giving its shape. And that is why we see so many different features and so many different... No two people even have the exact same fingerprint. Because we're all individual souls that is creating the unique shapes, even coming from the same mother. And where does the soul live? It resides in the heart. We know the heart is the central power station. And where does the heart get its power? The ultimate? It is from the soul. And how big is the soul? It is 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. If I had one, I could pull one out. But if you cut a piece of hair into 100 pieces and took one of those pieces and cut that into 100 pieces, that is the size of the soul. Based in the scripture. In the material world. And when it goes back to the spiritual world, it regains its eternal nature. Whether an elephant or an ant, or whatever that is, a dolphin, the size of the soul is the same. So the question might become then, well, if I'm eternal, full of bliss, full of knowledge, then aren't I God? We said God must be the supreme source, supreme controller, supreme proprietor. We are part and parcel of God. What does part and parcel mean? It means our soul came from God. He says, Mamai vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. We are the Lord's fragmental parts. And when we are part, it means we have similar qualities to the Lord. Just like if I take a small speck of gold from a block of gold, it has the same qualities as the whole block of gold. But it is very small in quantity. If I take a drop of ocean water, it has the same salt properties as the whole ocean. But how much salt is in this drop of water compared to the ocean? So we understand we are qualitatively one with the Lord, but quantitatively very small. So this is the part and parcel. And parcel means that we are separated expansions. We are eternally individual living entities. It is not that someday we merge back in. We are eternally separated expansions. And there are actually two souls living within the heart. There is the jiva and the super soul. The super soul is the Supreme Lord. He has chosen to also take residence in our heart. And thus he says, I am both near and far. And why he chose to take residence in our heart? Because, as we'll discuss next week, at one point in our journey, we decided to leave the spiritual world. And when we left, the Lord was so anxious for us to come back. He said, I'm coming with you. And whenever you desire to come back, I will be sitting right next to you. But there's a difference between our soul and the super soul. The super soul is infinite. Ours is very small. Qualitatively, it is Sat Chitananda, and we are Sat Chitananda. But again, quantitatively, infinite, we are very small. We may have some amount of beauty and intelligence, strength, these different opulences, but the Lord has them in unlimited quantities. So though we come from God, we are not God. And the super soul has presence everywhere. When I stub my toe, do any of you say ouch? No. Because my soul has consciousness of my body. Your soul has consciousness of your body. But the super soul, it has consciousness of all. And we'll see why that's relevant next week. And finally, it's very important now. What is it that we do when we're pushed into that office building? What is my role and function? What is the eternal action, the eternal occupation of the spirit soul. What is the soul's Sanatana Dharma? The Lord explains. This is what gives us clarity of purpose, which then brings peace of life. As soon as I know what I'm supposed to do, then I can find this peace and happiness. And the eternal position of the spirit soul is to be in loving service of the Lord. And there's a very logical explanation. Like these parts of a machine, the role of any part is to serve the whole. On this giant generator, there are screws and bolts. Does the individual screw generate power? No. It is part of the machine that generates power. My soul is part and parcel of God. So my eternal occupation is to be in relation with God. But when my soul is disconnected from the Lord, just like if this screw, if it's sitting in a drawer, what value does it have? Nothing. But if that screw is attached to that giant machine, it now has value because it's holding it together. But that screw has a role of serving. My hand, it is part of my body. What is the function of my hand? To serve the body. Because it is part of the whole. If my hand decides a piece of cake has come, how the hand can enjoy? By serving the whole body, by putting it into the stomach. But if the hand tries to enjoy that piece of cake independently, you know what? Forget the body. I want to enjoy the cake myself. All it can do is make a mess. Can it enjoy? No. Because the hand is part of the body. It has a constitutional position. Similarly, our soul, it has a constitutional position to be in loving service with the Lord. And when we do, we experience that bliss and happiness. But when we try to enjoy independently, separate, it's like the hand trying to experience the bliss of cake. It just doesn't work. So this nature is eternal. And the process of self-realization helps us to understand. And remember, every living entity has this innate nature to serve. If we analyze, no one goes through life without serving someone. We are always serving. The president, the CEO, husband, wife, doesn't matter. Everyone is serving. And if we have no one else to serve, we'll serve our dog. We are all serving. It is nature. It is the innate feature of the soul. You can have all the loving, all the wealth and all the things in the world, but if you're on an island by yourself, you'll be miserable. Why? Because you have no one to enjoy it with, no one to serve with your wealth. This service nature is innate to who we are. So it is not a question of if we are going to serve. It is only a question whom. And as we begin to experience an understanding that when I begin to serve the Lord, the experience of bliss and happiness is so profound, it propels me into the service. Now, service has a negative connotation in our experience. Why? Because in the world we see, service is one of exploitation. I go to the office and I serve my boss, and he gives me the absolute minimum amount of pay that's required to motivate me to come back tomorrow. And he keeps the maximum. That is the formula we see. But as we experience, when we serve the Lord, He takes the smallest thing that we do in service and multiplies it millions of times and thinks, wow, how sweet. Just like a child. When a child makes a card for his mother, even though the child is colored out of the lines, hasn't cut everything perfect, the glue is not right, what does mother do? She says, this is the greatest thing I've ever gotten. I could never put a price on it. Thank you. Appreciates beyond. Why? Because there's love between mother and child. When we serve the Lord, He looks at the littlest of things we do and showers so much love back. And actually, When we want to show our love to someone, we show it through service. If I tell my mother I love her, that's nice. But if I go and render some service, help her with something, bring her something, do something for her, use my time and energy in service to her, that is a full expression of my love. It is not an expression of my just ungratefulness. It shouldn't be. It's an expression of my love. So service to the Lord is an expression of our love, our appreciation. And when we do, He reciprocates back in ways we can never comprehend. It is unimaginable. And we'll try a quick experiment in a second. So I'm going to move through this. So quickly, just wrapping up now. The knowing about the soul, it is what brings us our happiness. Acting on this platform is not so easy though. We have been conditioned to think I am this body for so long. So it is not going to happen overnight. But when we do, that is when we'll find this peace and happiness. And it makes us able to become this fully joyful. All the trials and tribulations that are around us today, we walk with this umbrella of self-realization. It will no longer affect our consciousness. We become very forgiving. We see that all living entities are spirit souls. We no longer judge others by the color of their skin or their race or their ethnicity or demographic situation or gender. We judge based on everyone is a spirit soul. How much blood has been shed with the identification of I am this body, you are that body. This is the real world peace formula. Seeing the soul within everyone. And we stop hankering for everything. You know, the mind is constantly getting us to hanker for this, that, and the other. And we think, everything we want. No, the verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Shotati Takangshati. This hankering goes away. We get a car, and then someone else goes, well, I got the 5 Series, you only have the 3 Series. We get a house. You have a 4-bedroom house? I have 5. We get a watch. I have a Rolex. In this way, we're constantly comparing and the mind is throwing us through these turbulations. It's all related to eating nicely, sleeping nicely, mating nicely, defending nicely. But as soon as we come to see I am spirit soul, we become indifferent to all of these things and find that real happiness and peace. And then no one can knock us off this platform of peace. Once we realize it, nothing can get in our way. But we have to realize that this soul, separated from the Supreme Soul, is like a fish out of water. No matter how many fancy foods and jewels and fine music and wonderful things to drink and fancy straws and coconut umbrella drinks we give to a fish, if the fish is out of water, it will not be happy. The soul, it finds its happiness in relationship with the Supreme Soul. Spirit finds happiness in spirit. We are trying to mix spirit and matter like trying to mix oil and water. No matter how much you mix oil and water, it doesn't mix. The spirit soul finds its ananda in connection with the Supreme Spirit. We have tried for thousands of years to find it through all these different material means, but it doesn't happen. So I'll just conclude with one story and a quick experiment. So there was this lady who was given the gift of a very rare bird. And she got this bird and decided, I'm going to bring the best of the best cage for it. And she traveled to a very distant land to bring this beautiful brass cage. And then she traveled all the way across the world to find the best of the best polish. And she hung these beautiful jewels around, and constantly, day after day, she was polishing this cage. And all the while, she was decorating and polishing this cage. What did she forget to do? She forgot to feed the bird. And slowly, that bird began to perish. This is analogous to what we do before we come to spiritual realization. We are constantly polishing this body, finding nice things to do with it, but we are forgetting about the soul within. When there is an accident on the freeway, what is the first thing we inquire about? Is everyone okay? What is valued within all of us is the spirit soul. But we have gone through life so far, focused on polishing the cage, finding happiness for this body. But as we begin to nourish the soul, then we begin to experience the real purpose of life. And so how do we nourish the soul? How do we feed this bird? What is the fuel for the driver? It is this chanting process. The chanting of the holy names is the most potent fuel. It is the most potent soap to both cleanse and nourish the soul. And the power of the holy names is that the names of the Lord are non-different from the names. What does that mean? If I am thirsty and I chant, water, 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 is it going to quench my thirst? No. Because there is something different between the word water and the substance water. They're not the same. But in the spiritual names, there is no difference between the Lord and His names. And we want some proof. Okay. We're going to do a quick experiment, and this will end our session today. So I want 3 words. Someone give me one word, their favorite word, simple word.
Love.
Love. Another word.
Food.
Food. Service. Okay. Love, food, service. Bear with me. So we're going to chant these 3 words for 1 minute. Okay? If you want to feel the effect of the experiment, you got to participate. So we're going to close our eyes. You can get into a very meditative state. And we're going to do some mantra meditation. Okay, ready? Love, food, service. Love, food, service. Chant. Love, food, service. 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 Loud. Love, food, service. 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 Okay. That was barely a minute. It's actually quite hard. Now I'm going to give you 3 words to chant. And see the difference in the experience. We're going to chant the Maha Mantra. Okay? So only 3 words. Okay? So that was for 1 minute. Now in the same, try to bring the same mood, and we'll chant these 3 words together. You can chant the mantra together with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Okay. Any difference? Trust me, you can try this with any 3 words you want, and then you compare it to this mantra. There is a spiritual potency in the names of the Lord that resonate with the soul, that bring it back in connection, putting that fish back into the water, into its natural environment. If you just try this 10 minutes a day, and you come back, what's today, February 1st, 2nd? 1st. Come back on March 1st and tell me your experience. Just 10 minutes. It is a profound effect. This mantra meditation, it is so powerful. It is the greatest food, the nourishment for the soul. And it is the greatest cleansing agent to bring about this peace and happiness. And so, you won't know it until you try it. Just like if I tell you a piece of cake is sweet, I can explain to you all the logic of why it's sweet and how it was made. But until you put a spoonful into your mouth, you won't know for sure. So, if you're interested, you can try this chanting. We actually brought some chanting beads and bags for anyone who would like to try the process. It's extremely powerful, and it'll bring about this realization. We'll talk more about it in a couple weeks. So next week we'll be discussing this: why do bad things happen to good people? Next week we'll kind of take an exhale. It won't be as technical. I told you in the beginning that today's session was very dense. This nature of the soul, because it's a subtle topic, is a little bit difficult to fully grasp. And as we progress through this seminar, this seeing ourselves as spirit soul will become more real. But it is the foundational understanding. And so next week we'll begin to explore, is God really the cause of all of our suffering? Why is it that there's so much suffering around us? If the spiritual world is this place of bliss, why are we suffering here and He's enjoying up there? Who is the cause of this? Why did we come here? All of these questions we're going to discuss over the next 2 weeks in this module. So, thank you very much.